tend, what we do is we there are many what you call agreements that we just blindly sign. We say yes, we agree to this, or we say that we don't even read it because it's so long. So how can somebody look into, if there is there anything that we need to be aware of, highlighting? So there's a standard that is working on, like, so they are working on one of the standards to check, what's what kind of agreement are we signing? Is it okay to sign, and things like that? That makes some kind of a judgment on it. So now that's a nutshell, in nutshell, what IEEE is, and feel free to ask me questions in between also, whenever you have any thought, any question that is coming in to your mind. Please feel to raise the question. So as I mentioned, IEEE is the SA, the Standards Association within IEEE. They just recently launched the new website, new branding, raising the world standard. So that's the thing. What does standards do? What does a standard really do? Standards is that it helps in creating interoperability. What do you mean by interoperability? It's like a plug and play thing. When we talk about in the devices, so a very good example is that now many a times it happens that you when you're traveling, your phone charge might go low. So when your phone charge is going low, and especially if you're traveling in a car, Uber or Ola or anything, you can, most of them, you ask the driver, hey, do you have a charger? Can I charge my phone on your car? And most of the Android phones, it comes with a standard charging cable, right? But if you have if say for example, if you have a iPhone, uh, it doesn't fit, so iPhone cable is not it doesn't fit with the Android cable. Uh, but whereas the Android, everything, all the Androids, they either have the C cable, or the earlier cable that we used to get. So that's what is interoperability, like, plug and play. Any device, if you plug and put another device, it should start working in the same fashion. For another example, if you want me to give, it is like a weighing machine, right? In a hospital, if you have a weighing machine which is connected to the central manager, healthcare manager, and say this machine is transmitting the data from the data from this machine to the healthcare manager, so that it captures all the recordings, whether, so this person at this time, when we weighed him, this is the number of, this is the kgs, or this is the pounds that he was weighing. So the way it happens is, the way that data is getting transmitted, also it makes a matter. So one machine manufacturer, when you're transmitting, he may prefer to transmit in a XML format. The other manufacturer might prefer to submit the document, the data in a, say, HTTP format. So then now there is a difference between these two, right? So at the central machine, so it becomes difficult to understand who's saying what. So that's what I'm trying to represent that in this picture here. This is from one of the movie, Rush Hour. I don't know if anybody have seen it, but the person who's talking there, he asks, like, do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? So this also talks about another thing, so it's also the brand image. Most of them who have seen this movie, whenever we go to colleges, or whenever we have this presentation and we ask about this, they all talk about, this movie, which movie it is, and then they will talk who the other person who we are not able to see. He's Jackie Chan. Everybody says he's Jackie Chan, but nobody will be able to say, the other person who's talking, whose face is being seen. That's the brand image. That's the brand value also. What happens is, with the standards, standards also create a brand value. When you and especially when the startups, since we have a person who has a startup here. So when you have a startup and you are trying to give sell a product or a service, what happens is, if you are you need to get the acceptance. and somebody should trust you, and trust your product, and be able to place an order, or buy the product or service from you. So with the standard, if they say that if your product is adhering to such and such standard, for example, if you are manufacturing a router, or a phone, and if it say that this particular phone or router is adhering, or is complying to IEEE's 802.11 AC. So there will not be any questions asked, so because now they know that it's adhering to a particular standard, and it will work fine. So that's the brand value that it creates. With that brand value, it also what happens is it also opens up the market for the standard. It also opens up the borders. For example, now suddenly you don't have to have even though you might have a presence here in India, you're still able to market yourself in other countries, and they will be able to accept your product and services, because now they kind of trust you because of the standard that is happening. So that's what the standard bring in, and and we've seen the effect of the standards, whether it be from the Wi-Fi perspective, the number of devices that are being manufactured using the Wi-Fi standards. They are going in millions and billions of devices that are being created every month, or every year. So that's another thing. And it also enhances the innovation standards. What happens is when you have a standard, you try to excel it. That's the reason why we come with newer versions of the standards. Like similarly, how we come up with newer versions of software. Similarly, the standards also try to overcome uh, some of the flaws, or some of the newer aspects and newer properties in the new standard definitions. So that's what the standard is. And there are so people standards are nothing but, like, they are documents. They are documents which specify how to do it, what to do use. And once we have the standard specification, the people would be able to replicate that, and use that, and create that in a continuous fashion. Hope you understand what a standard is now. What a standard is. If not, please ask me more questions. I can try to explain what a standard is. um, so within IEEE SA, we have, as I said, like, there are many different standards and projects that are there. uh, and there are many different what you call participants also. If you look at this, there are only 7,500 plus individual members, but whereas there are 34,000 global participants. What does that mean? That kind of says that you can participate in the standards activities even if you are not a member. That's what it means. Though there are 7,500 members, but there are more participants. So hence, that's another thing. One of the thing is, when you are working with standards, when you are working with standard projects, or you are working with many professionals across the globe, from across the different industries, across different stakeholders. So you get to learn a lot. Even many people, they come onto standards projects so that they can learn, and also you get to create a good industrial kind of network among yourself. So yeah, and within IEEE, what also happens is we have a different portfolio. We have so what we call on the if you look at the left hand, or your right, I guess, or left hand side, industry connections. That is nothing but your pre-standardization work. Sometimes what happens is there is a need. So we do sometimes the newer technology, especially if there's a new technology, uh, people come to know that there is something that we need to be that needs to be done, but they do not know exactly what needs to be done. There is no specific idea or specific focused thing or issue that they can point to. but they know that that we need to come together and think about how can we make it better. So that is when we create pre-standardization projects, what we call it as industry connections program. Okay. So that's industry connections program is more loosely connected. It's a 2-year program, a 2-year project, so to say. Within 2 years, there are many different types of outcomes that people come up with. Okay. And then we have this standardization itself. The standardization is when you know that specifically there is a one issue, or that something has to be standardized. Like for example, your domain information model. Like as I gave you the example of a weighing machine. Now I know, like when most of you are from the I know that you know some, at least some basic software side of it, and you might have created some software or databases. And so when you are creating a database, you have this whole domain information model, that the way that you create the table and the way you create the columns and etc. So when you are doing that, and how you when you're transmitting this data in let's say in an XML. So it could be that you are in the structure, you may pass in name first. One may pass in name, the other may pass in the weight, the other manufacturer may pass in the uh, time, for example. So but again, that's a problem, right? Though the transport layer is the same, everybody is using the XML, but within that the domain information is different. So that's something now that, so we can, that's when you identify that, like, okay, this is the problem, then you can create a standard project where you say, hey, we need to standardize this. We need to come up with consensus on this, so that everybody uses the same structure and the same methodology. That's when standardization works into come into play. I'm going membership. I already talked about people become members. I know there are two different types of membership: individual and the corporate membership. I'm not going to go too deep into it. Then we also have this conformity assessment. So once a standard is created, somebody has to uh, what you call validate whether you're somebody. If I'm saying if I have a product, I say that, hey, my product is adhering to 802.11 AC or AX. So now when I do that, somebody should say that, authorize it, whether yes, whatever I'm saying is correct or not. So there should be some kind of test that needs to be tested on your system or in your product, and ascertain that yes, this is so you are actually adhering to the standards. So that is what the conformity assessment does. It's a CAP conformity assessment program that we have. So we do certify some of these products and standards, whether they are adhering to the standard. What is a registry? We also do registry. Like how many of you have heard of MAC IDs? Those who are in the networking, I'm sure you know about MAC IDs, right? Have you heard about the MAC ID? Anybody? Abed or Hidayat? Can you hear me? Hello, Nafis?
Yes, yeah. Yes,
Uh, Have you heard about the MAC ID?
sir.
So MAC IDs are, is like identifier. It's like, what you call each and every device has a MAC ID. Like your computer, your phone has a MAC ID by which you can identify this is really my phone. This is, it's a unique ID, like how Aadhaar card is for humans, especially in India. So similarly, MAC ID is something that it's a registry of all the unique um, devices or adapters, network adapters, and things like that. So that is something again managed by IEEE Standards Association. Right now, the standards are getting into many different areas, new areas, pharmaceuticals, agriculture. They are all getting there. Not going to spend too much time there. And again, as I mentioned, I wanted to be more interactive here, so so that I know that that you are also it's valuable for you guys. Whatever I'm talking, or if you have any, if it's not understood, then I may change a bit in the way I'm presenting it. Okay. So IEEE. Now let me talk about IEEE 802. How this is helping in the 5G. When we talk about 5G, if you look at the data that is being transmitted, right? The whole data which is being transmitted, we are transmitting a lot of data. More than 70% of the data is getting transmitted through the Wi-Fi than the mobile itself. Because that's usually the enterprise at the enterprise level. We are all transmitting the data using the Wi-Fi, and not through the cellular. So hence the importance of the Wi-Fi is very important. You can understand how important this 802 in the industry is. And because it's these are this is the so though they are all cellular. If you look at Wi-Fi, the data that is getting transmitted through the Wi-Fi is much higher than one which is going transferred by mobile device. This is just uh, how many Indians I was telling you right here. That, uh, 18 so that means compared to earlier, every billion new devices are like Wi-Fi. uh, 82 dot 82 dot 1 is the 10, the time set networks. When this is used in the bridging architecture, and the automotive nowadays, about what you call when we talk about the V2X vehicle to anything activity. Uh, it, to, to that one is also being talked about. It's being used now. Ethernet, we all know Ethernet, right? We're using Ethernet. But the newer is having so new need for the Ethernet. So 802.11, I will talk a little bit more on that. 802.15 is the personal area network. 802.15, what we also call it, as we all generally know it as Zigbee. 802.15.4. A lot of IoT products or IoT programs, they use 802.15.4, especially with respect to smart metering. I don't know if you know about the smart metering, where we see this whole the electron, like in Bangalore we have this BESCOM, right? Similarly in other places there are different service providers, electric service providers. They all have these smart meters nowadays. So what does this smart meter do? They transmit the data, how many units of electricity have consumed and things like that. So that data is available at that kind of transmission happens nowadays. With the smart metering, they are using 802.15.4. There is also Zigbee is also used in many of the healthcare devices. whether it be like a Fitbit or other wherein you have all these trackers, right? That people are wearing wearables. So a lot of these wearables they use the 15.4. Okay, and there is also the other standards that are out there. One specifically, that one thing I wanted to bring it up is 802.22. 802.22 is a what we also call it as white space, TV white space. TV white space is particular range of frequency which is allocated by the government as free for learning. So that is something can be used for rural connectivity. Rural connectivity, that is very much helpful. Okay. Now, what are the features, right? What are the features of the 802.11? So with the 11AX, that's a new model, that or the new Wi-Fi that came out. That's also called as Wi-Fi 6. So Wi-Fi 6, what they did was they did a whole study by Broadcom. Broadcom did this whole study in two different areas. One is the dense deployments, and the other one is the indoor location. And they tested out on 5G features. What do you mean by 5G, right? What is 5G? 5G, if you look at it, there are many specifications which define what a 5G is. These specifications are actually mainly defined by the ITU, and when the ITU defined this the specifications, the 802.11x came across. It not only met the specifications, but it also surpassed the specifications. So hence the Wi-Fi 802.11ax is very very powerful when it comes to dense population, especially like places like in India. I know it's very very important when you are too many people there, and hence the mobile connectivity doesn't work very well. So like in our istamas, right? For example, in istama, suddenly we see that the connectivity is not there. And but when it comes to, if instead of that, if we try to deploy some 802.11ax kind of routers across the whole area, then the connectivity would be super. So there'll not be any issues with that, because even though it's so dense, it can still use it. So the 802.11bd is something that is being used on the automotive uh, for the V2X. On the Internet of Things, when you talk about Internet of Things, if it is so 802.11, I don't know if it works on the 2.4 gigahertz and also on the 5 gigahertz, right? Uh, but when it comes to sometimes Internet of Things, you need sub gigahertz, lower, less than 1 gigahertz. That is when 802.11 11.ah comes into play, which for the Internet of Things. Okay. So the sub gigahertz, these are all the different applications where the 802.11ax is getting used in the robots, the local imaging, in the stores, where you are trying to identify or communicate for each of the trackers there, and in the agricultural aspects, in home and building automation. These are all the different places wherever the IoT is being utilized. The 802.11ah is very much prominently used in this area. So far, are there any questions? Is that okay? My speed, everything, is that okay? Hidayat and Abed, is that okay?
It's okay. You please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, sorry, somebody had a question, or I heard some noise, but I couldn't hear. Was there anything that anybody wanted to ask? Okay, I do not hear anything, so let me move ahead. Uh, so we also have, the 802.11ay, which is, on the 60 gigahertz. Uh, Especially what happens is, now in India we don't have the 60 gigahertz band open yet, but there is something that we are trying to work with many different organizations, trying to influence the government to open up the 60 gigahertz. 60 gigahertz, what will happen is, it has a very high speed connectivity. With 60 gigahertz, the connectivity is very high. Only the challenge here is it's also, since it should be a close proximity. It will be very high speed, but in the closed proximity. Within the small area, if you want to use the high throughput, then we can use the 60 gigahertz, that is the 802.11ad or 11ay. Okay, and when it comes to the positioning of the, like GPA kind of thing, right? So that's where the 802.11az is being worked on. So when we currently have, of course, we currently have the GPA and different formats. Now that's how we are able to drive. We use the Google Maps, etc. But in AZ, what it also does is, it can even do indoor navigation to the extent of, less than 100 centimeter, like 1.1 meter kind of thing. So this can be used in hospitals, for example. Hospitals, what happens is there are many big devices or many big machines that they keep moving from one place to other, one room to other room. Sometimes, they do not know where this device is. So hence, with the tracker, we can easily track where exactly is this is available, which cannot be done, in the regular GPA. Now, as I mentioned about the 5G, it's the requirements are being defined by the IMT 2020. There are many different requirements that are being defined, whether it be on the mobile broadband, whether it be on the new radio, or even what kind of features are existing, etc. So these are all, when they're defined, and that's based upon that, the implementation and everything goes on. It is not similar to what was between the 3G and 4G. It was not just a small evolution of between 3G and 4G. This 5G is completely, it's much bigger than that. It also involves device to device communication, which is not there in the 4G or in the 3G. The advanced or enhanced models of the device to device communication is there. Those are all some of the different, like, whether it be on the MIMO side, and whether it be on the massive MIMO or multi input and multi output thing. So these are all the new things that are there in the 5G. And the 5G will also take advantage of many other aspects, whether it be a small cell, or, on the how can we use 5G for IoT, how can I use 5G for cloud computing, etc. These are all the newer areas which are going to be used in the 5G. Other than the fact that, 5G is supposed to be also very fast, when the data transmission, with very less latency, is something that has been promised on the 5G side of it. So IEEE is really, at the core of all this work that is going on in the 5G aspects of it, whether it be on the D2D or whether it be on the SDN side of it, or information centric networking, etc. And so we have been working on all these different areas, and there are many different standards that are getting developed. So there is within IEEE there's a new initiative that is called Future Networks. If you go to the Future Networks initiative, you will see that how IEEE is working on all of this 5G, specifically 5G related activities on not just 5G but even beyond 5G. People are now working on 6G, etc. Okay. So I already mentioned to you that 802.11ax 11ax is something that which was tested on the two different platforms, indoor hotspot and the dense urban information. And there is a the whole report is out there. If you seek this report as to how great this is, or what was the kind of benchmarking and all, you'll be able to get that report. Just a little bit glimpse of that report is out here. I'm not sure if you guys are into it. If you are into it, I can also share this report with you. Then we can have a look at that in detail. How, like for example, like you look at the peak data range, data rate, right? ITU defines it should be that at least 10 Gbps, and wherein in the performance 802.11ax, the download and the upload, it came up to 20.78 Gbps. Similarly, the peak spectral efficiency, download should be at the 30 bits per hertz, per second per hertz, and now wherein it came up to 58.01 bits. So similarly, if you look at each and every aspect here, the efficiencies and everything was much higher than what was actually defined by the ITU. Okay, so hence the 802.11ax, the Wi-Fi 6, it actually surpasses the requirements of the 5G connectivity in two different areas. So this is one was for the dense urban, the other one was for the indoor hotspot. In both these areas, it has really surpassed it. Now coming into some of the standards work that are going on. Um, one of the thing is, like as I mentioned, the specifications of 5G. In 5G we called, there are one of the other specification is the connectivity should be good without any breakage, even at a speed of say 300 kilometer per second, per hour, 300 kilometer per hour. So but if you look at that is what has been defined. But is that the requirement that we are looking here in India? In India, it's not. We hardly have any transportation. Whether it be a car, or whether it be a high speed. We don't have any high speed rails which are going at 300 kilometer per hour. So hence, that is not the requirement. For us, we have our requirements are different. Our requirements are dense population. Even if it is a low mobility, that is fine. But our requirements are to keep it more. How can I keep it more economical, etc. So hence, that's why we call it as frugal 5G. Frugal 5G means some basic aspects of 5G, and then we are good at it, as long as So hence, this is the standard that is being worked on the P2061, which looks into all the requirements from a developing nation, wherein at a very economical aspect, how can I still have some frugal 5G supported on it. Okay, that's the 2061. So also, if you look at it, now what's happening is, with 5G, you can have multi-rack, that is multiple radio access points. So what does that mean? That means your device will support, can have handshake between mobile device and Wi-Fi device, Wi-Fi link. If your data is coming on Wi-Fi, Now suddenly when you are out of the range of Wi-Fi, it can that call or that thing can be transmitted to the mobile aspect of it. So the hence that's the reason why this whole SDN is into play. The software defined networks, networking SDN. And with this, what we are trying to do is the 1930.1. It tries to standardize, especially with the routers. You get all kinds of routers. So how can I have a standard APIs defined here, so that when we are talking about this multi-rat system, that can still work with the SDNs. So that's the whole thing that is being defined on the 1930.1, which is going to go live in by end of this year. Okay. Uh, so there are some other standards that are out there, and one thing that I would also like to bring up is 1918.1. 1918.1 is the tactile internet, which is actually defines the new user access. How differently the users can access it. And also the 1941.1, which defines the internet grades of services in the rural areas. Different, how can I have from a rural area in the villages, there is no defined quality of service. So that's what the 1941.1 is looking at, defining some kind of a recommended practice for the quality of service or grade of service in the rural areas. The 2872 is also very important. This is so for example, now if you are in a train. Now the railways also give you the Wi-Fi access, or even if it's a smart city, you get the Wi-Fi access. But what happens is, if you go from one station to another station, you might have to again validate your device, or you might have to again connect to the existing network, provide your credentials, etc. So why is that happening? Because that service provider might be different, the router is different, etc. Hence, you have to again authenticate your system or your device to this new service provider and new router. So how can I have this handshake between these routers, between the service providers, which are being provided by a same provider, in the sense, like the railways. uh, why should I do connect to every station or every place? Why should I do that? Can I have a wirelessly, can I authenticate my device wirelessly to to all the different networks that the railways is providing? That is called WLAN. And 2872 is something that's that they're looking at this interoperability from the connectivity perspective. From the how can I connect my phone, for example, to different providers and different routers, if it is specially provided by the same organization or same authority. Okay. So IoT, I don't know. I'm not going to go into defining what IoT is. I'm sure I see that you have some good understanding of the IoT itself. Or if you want some basic of IoT, that's a different topic that we can go into. But within IoT, what we are trying to do here is trying to build that the TIPS framework. TIPS is the build the trust, identity, privacy, protection, security, and safety into this whole network, or into this whole framework. That's how our standards are being what we call designed, so that wherever, irrespective of which area that you're working on, whether it be at the sense level or actuate level, or analyzation level, everywhere you have this whole TIPS framework in place. That means you're through these standards, you build your trust in these systems, and you build privacy in these systems, etc., so that the data is not lost. Okay. And IoT is, we know that every IoT is being now used everywhere. If it's just across the different verticals and horizontals. IoT is being used, and hence it's, as we know that this is a very old slide, which talks about how going forward there'll be billions of devices which are connected, and um, that's the impact of the IoT itself. There are many things that are there. So with that, we also have many standards on the IoT side of it. 2413 it defines the whole architectural framework, which defines what a thing is. Because when you are in a IoT framework, if you think about it, you may have multiple devices. Multiple devices sending multiple types of data, and everything is connected to one central hub. So you need to be able to define what is sending this data. Is this my device? Is this authenticated device, or something else is sending this data, etc. So all those things are defined by the 2413. That's the whole architectural framework that that particular standard is doing. And 1451 is for the IoT harmonization. And again, there are multiple protocols that are being used by different devices when they're transmitting the data, whether it be XMPP, MQTT, REST protocol, CoAP protocol, etc. So how can I have a harmonized way? Like, that means irrespective of all this, I should still be able to work together. So that's what this whole 1451.1 1551 is about. Which uses the XMPP, and they come up with now with the XMPP. Even if there are multiple devices sending multiple types of protocols, or uses multiple protocols, you can still kind of map everything in this XMPP. Okay. And there are other standards within the IoT. For example, 11073 is something on the medical devices side of it. When you talk about medical devices, I already gave you an example of the weighing machine, etc. So that's where this 11073 comes into play. Okay. So I'm gonna skip all this since I'm gonna share this document. Later on, you can have a look at each one of these instead of me reading through it or going through each and every standard that is available. I just highlighted some of the key ones. So in nutshell, that the standards that we have on the 5G and IoT are pretty much relevant to the industry needs, and they are trying to what you call cater to all the needs, and yeah, help this 5G and the IoT together. So that's pretty much from my side. So if you have any questions, you may ask now. Does anybody have any question? I do not hear any question. If there are no other questions, then I would like to thank MFIRD. No, Abed, I cannot hear you. So is there a question, Abed? I cannot hear you now. If you can send me a question in the chat window as well. If I see one question here. Okay. How is the vehicle tracking in IoT works? Okay. Um, okay, no problem. You can type the question here. So when you're talking about vehicle tracking, so are you talking about the I don't know what you when you're looking at how to track a vehicle itself, so there are one is that the vehicle tracking as to tracking the vehicle itself. So what happens is you have all these tracking elements that are fit to the or get are deployed on the vehicles, which keeps transmitting the data. They are actually, what happens is they get connected to the cloud system, that's how the data it works on the GPS of the machine. Along with the GPS of the machine, it gets connected to the it gets connected to the cloud, and hence the data is, that's how that whole data is getting transmitted, and they are able to track, the organizations are able to track it. Is that the question that you had? Okay, thank you. So for conformance tests to meet standards, are there any automation test suites available, or is it checked manually? Yes, there are, for conformity assessment, there are test suites available. So what happens is, while they are defining, or while they are working on the standards development, they also start developing or defining the test protocols or test suites as well. So there are, some aspects. I wouldn't say like everything is based upon the test suite, but some of them would be manual, as some of, and most of them would also be on the so fully automated test suite. So yes, we do work on that. The test suite, they use the test suites to develop these conformance tests. It's a good question. Anything else? All right. Yeah, I do not see any other questions here. So with that, I would thank you guys, for patiently, going through this whole presentation, and listening to this presentation, and also thank MFRD for this opportunity for me to present. Thank you. And anybody wants anything else, even if you don't have a question at this point, and if you want to get back to me, feel free to to send me an email. I send my email ID in the chat window. You can reach out to me on that, and we can get connected there. Thank you.